Everyone in my life hated my perfect partner for no reason and I couldn't figure out why. I started investigating behind his back and discovered the truth from his old coworkers. The truth left me completely shocked. I, 29 female, have been with my partner Ryan, 31 male, for almost 6 years now, and there's something that's been bothering me for a long time. People outside our close friend circle just don't seem to like him. At all. This has been a pattern that's followed him his entire life, and I can't figure out why. When Ryan and I first met during our final year at university, I noticed right away that he didn't have many friends. We ended up working on a group project together, and he mentioned that he transferred from another school. At the time, I didn't think much of it. My friend group quickly welcomed him, and he fit in perfectly with us. My core group consists of Maya, 29 female, Elena, 30 female, Devin, 30 male, and Cameron, 29 male. We're a diverse bunch. Maya and Elena are a couple, Devin is gay, Cameron is pansexual, and I'm bisexual. Ryan is straight, but he never once made anyone uncomfortable. After we graduated and started working, I learned more about Ryan's past. He grew up in a small town and had almost no friends throughout his childhood and teenage years. This shocked me because he's one of the most genuine people I've ever met. According to him, he briefly had a group of friends in elementary school, the science club kids, but even they eventually pushed him out. By high school, he ate lunch alone and focused entirely on academics and track. I asked his mom about this once when we visited his hometown. She just shook her head and said it always broke her heart. According to her, Ryan was a kind child who excelled in school and sports. He was the state champion in cross-country 3 years running. He got straight A's. He was even voted most likely to succeed in his yearbook despite having no real friends. His mom showed me his old yearbooks, barely any signatures. The few that were there said generic things like have a great summer or good luck in college. With our friend group, Ryan thrived. He was always the first to offer help when someone needed it. When Elena's car broke down at 2 a.m., Ryan drove 40 minutes to pick her up and then spent the next day helping her find a reliable mechanic. When Cameron went through a bad breakup, Ryan let him crash at his place for 3 weeks. He even became our unofficial bodyguard at bars, not because he was aggressive, but because he had this calm, confident way of diffusing situations before they escalated. When we started dating, I discovered even more things to appreciate about him. He's incredibly thoughtful, remembering small details about things I mention in passing and surprising me with them later. He's smart but never condescending. He's successful in his career as an environmental engineer but remains humble about his achievements. The problem started when we moved in together and began socializing more with people outside our university circle. My family was polite to Ryan but never seemed to warm up to him. My sister Megan, 33F, and her husband Todd, 35M, would invite us to their gatherings, but they'd barely engage with Ryan. Todd is the classic life of the party type, loud, tells constant jokes, watches all the popular shows, and follows all the major sports. Ryan is much quieter, more thoughtful, and has specific niche interests like mountaineering, astronomy, and historical documentaries. One time, we were at a family barbecue, and Todd was talking about renovating their kitchen. He mentioned how much they were paying the contractor, and Ryan quietly mentioned that the price seemed high. Todd brushed him off. 3 months later, the renovation was a disaster, shoddy workmanship, electrical issues, and water damage. Ryan offered to take a look since he'd rebuilt parts of our house, but Todd declined. They ended up hiring another contractor at twice the cost to fix everything. At Ryan's workplace, things were even stranger. He works for an environmental consulting firm where he's respected for his technical skills but excluded socially. Last year, there was a company retreat to Lake Tahoe. Ryan found out about it by accident when a colleague mentioned packing for the trip. When he asked his manager about it, they said, "Oh, we didn't think outdoor activities would be your thing." This was absurd because Ryan is an avid hiker who does solo backpacking trips regularly. Another time, 6 colleagues went to see a talk by a renowned climate scientist, someone Ryan had actually collaborated with on a project. They didn't invite him, despite knowing his work in the field. When he mentioned seeing photos of them at the event on social media, one coworker awkwardly said, "We thought you'd be busy with your volunteer work." Speaking of which, Ryan serves on the board of an environmental nonprofit that cleans up waterways. He's passionate about this work and often speaks about it with genuine enthusiasm. He's organized several community events and has received recognition from local government officials. Yet somehow, this commitment seems to further isolate him from peers. What's most confusing is that my old university friends absolutely love Ryan. We still get together regularly, and everyone asks for him specifically when he can't make it. With them, he's relaxed, funny, and engaged. The only change over the years is that he doesn't party as much as the rest of us. While we might stay out drinking until 3 a.m., Ryan usually heads home around midnight. He's explained that heavy drinking affects him badly the next day, he gets terrible migraines and can't function well. But he's never judgmental about our choices. He often hosts dinner at our place before everyone goes out, making sure there's good food and drinks for everyone. Last month, things came to a head when we visited my parents. My dad spent the entire weekend praising Todd's new job in car sales, talking about what a real go-getter he is. Meanwhile, Ryan had just received a significant promotion at work and was leading a major restoration project for the city, but my dad barely acknowledged it. At one point, my mom needed help with her laptop, and despite Ryan working in technology previously, she called my teenage nephew instead. On the drive home, I noticed Ryan was unusually quiet. He stared out the window most of the trip, and when I asked if he was okay, he just nodded and said he was tired. But I caught him looking at an old photo of us with our university friends later that night, and something about his expression made my chest tighten. I tried talking to my mom about it on the phone the following week. I asked directly if there was something about Ryan that bothered her or Dad. She sounded surprised and said, "Don't be silly, he's fine." When I pressed further, she changed the subject. I tried asking my sister too, and she just said, "He's a bit intense, isn't he? Always talking about those environmental things." This pattern has repeated itself so many times that I'm starting to wonder if I'm missing something obvious. Is there some quality about Ryan that others see but I'm blind to? Is he different around other people when I'm not there? The thought makes my stomach twist, but I have to consider it. I've watched him carefully in group settings, and all I see is someone who listens attentively, speaks thoughtfully, and treats everyone with respect. He doesn't dominate conversations or put others down. If anything, he's more reserved in larger groups, especially with people he doesn't know well. The only somewhat negative trait I can identify is that Ryan doesn't adapt his personality to fit different social situations. He's consistently himself regardless of who he's with. He won't pretend to care about sports if he doesn't. He won't laugh at jokes he doesn't find funny. He's authentic to a fault. My best guess is that people might find him intimidating because of his success, or perhaps they misinterpret his thoughtfulness as aloofness. Ryan doesn't engage in small talk easily. He prefers deeper conversations about ideas rather than gossip or current trends. Maybe this makes him seem unapproachable. I've also wondered if it's jealousy. Ryan is conventionally attractive with a naturally athletic build from his years of running. He's financially stable and successful in his career. We have a good relationship. Perhaps these qualities make others uncomfortable? Whatever the reason, watching how people treat him affects me more than it seems to affect him. When I see him being excluded or dismissed, I want to scream. I want to list all the ways he's wonderful, all the times he's helped others without expecting anything in return. I'm writing this because we're planning to start trying for a baby soon, and these concerns have intensified. I want our child to see the Ryan I know, the kind, brilliant, supportive man I love, not the version other people seem to see. And selfishly, I want reassurance that I'm not deluding myself. That the man I'm planning to have a family with is truly the good person I believe him to be. Has anyone else experienced something like this? A disconnect between how you see your partner and how the world sees them? Any advice would be appreciated. Update 1. It's been about 3 weeks since my original post, and I wanted to update everyone who offered advice and support. Your comments gave me a lot to think about, and they pushed me to take action rather than just worry. Many of you suggested that Ryan might be neurodivergent in some way, possibly on the autism spectrum or perhaps dealing with social anxiety. Some others mentioned that he might come across differently to others than he does to me, possibly appearing arrogant or condescending without meaning to. These comments made me realize that I needed more information from sources other than just my personal observations. I decided to reach out to a couple of Ryan's former colleagues who had moved to different companies but had worked closely with him. I explained that I was trying to understand some social dynamics and asked if they'd be willing to share their honest perspectives. The first person I contacted was Jen, who had worked with Ryan on a major restoration project 2 years ago. We met for coffee, and what she told me was unexpected. She described Ryan as one of the most straightforward people she'd ever worked with. According to her, many people at the office respected his expertise but found him too principled for workplace politics. She explained that in their field, there's often pressure to compromise environmental standards to accommodate clients or cut costs, but Ryan consistently pushed back against this. He would bring up ethical concerns in meetings that others preferred to ignore, which made some colleagues uncomfortable. The second person was Marcus, who had been in management when Ryan was first hired. His perspective was equally revealing. He said Ryan was highly regarded for his technical skills but that some people found him too earnest for the corporate environment. Marcus mentioned that there were often happy hour gatherings where people would complain about clients or joke about cutting corners, and Ryan either didn't participate or would gently challenge these attitudes. According to Marcus, this created a perception that Ryan was judging others, even though he was never explicitly critical. Both Jen and Marcus used the word integrity repeatedly when describing Ryan. They also both mentioned, unprompted, that several colleagues had speculated that Ryan was deeply religious because of his ethical stance and his reluctance to engage in office gossip or crude humor. This made me laugh because Ryan isn't religious at all. His principles come from his own thoughtful consideration of right and wrong, not from any spiritual doctrine. But I could see how his earnestness might be misinterpreted that way in our rather cynical society. Armed with this new perspective, I began paying closer attention to Ryan's interactions with others. I noticed that in conversations with my family, he often gently redirected gossip toward more substantive topics. When my brother-in-law Todd made a joke about those environmental nuts, not realizing it would offend Ryan didn't laugh along but instead talked about the real economic benefits of conservation. He wasn't rude or confrontational, but he also didn't pretend to find it funny. I also observed that Ryan never participated when conversations turned toward criticizing people who weren't present. During a dinner with my extended family, when everyone was dissecting my cousin's recent divorce, Ryan quietly changed the subject to ask my cousin's son about his college classes instead. As for the neurodivergent angle, I spent time researching autism spectrum traits and observing Ryan through that lens. While he does have some characteristics that overlap, like his specific interests and occasional difficulty with small talk, he doesn't show many of the other common signs. He's very good at reading emotions, maintaining eye contact, and understanding social cues. He just sometimes chooses not to conform to expectations that don't align with his values. The most revealing moment came last weekend when we were hiking with a few colleagues from my workplace. Someone mentioned a recent scandal involving a politician, and everyone began excitedly discussing the salacious details. Ryan listened for a while, then quietly asked if anyone had read about the policy implications of the scandal instead. There was an awkward silence before the conversation shifted. On the drive home, I finally decided to bring up everything that had been on my mind. I told Ryan about my original post, the responses, and my conversations with his former colleagues. I asked if he was aware of how others sometimes perceived him. Ryan wasn't surprised at all. He told me he'd been navigating these dynamics his entire life. From childhood, he'd noticed that his unwillingness to pretend or go along with things that didn't feel right to him often made others uncomfortable. He explained that he'd made peace with it long ago and focused on connecting with people who appreciated his authenticity. He mentioned that our university friends were the first group that truly accepted him as he was. They never expected him to be anyone other than himself. When they partied too hard, they understood his limits without judgment. When they needed help, they accepted it without making him feel weird for offering. Most importantly, Ryan told me that while he sometimes wished more people understood him, he didn't actually want or need widespread social approval. He said that having me, our close friends, and his meaningful work gave him all the connection he needed. The opinions of my family or casual acquaintances didn't particularly bother him. This conversation has left me feeling both relieved and somewhat ashamed. Relieved because I now understand that the problem isn't some hidden flaw in Ryan's character that I've been blind to. If anything, the qualities that make him somewhat of a social outsider, his authenticity, integrity, and unwillingness to compromise his values for social ease, are exactly what make him such an exceptional partner. I feel ashamed because I realize I've been worrying more about how others perceive him than about supporting the person he actually is. I've been unconsciously wanting him to be more adaptable and pleasing to my family, rather than appreciating his consistency and honesty. Our conversation ended with Ryan thanking me for loving him as he is. He said that before meeting me and our university friends, he'd assumed he would go through life largely alone, focused on his work and causes he cared about. Finding people who valued his authenticity had been unexpected and profound for him. So while the mystery of why many people don't warm to Ryan isn't completely solved, I feel much more at peace with it. The problem seems to be that he's unwilling to engage in the small hypocrisies and social performances that oil many interactions. He won't pretend interest in topics he doesn't care about. He won't laugh at jokes that target vulnerable people. He won't ignore ethical concerns for the sake of getting along. And honestly, those aren't problems at all. They're qualities to admire. Thank you to everyone who commented on my original post. Your perspectives helped me approach this with curiosity rather than anxiety. I still wish my family could see the Ryan I know, but I'm no longer worried that I'm missing something crucial about the man I love. Update 2. It's been nearly 2 months since my last update, and a lot has happened. I wasn't planning to post again, but recent events have made me want to share and get some outside perspective. After my last update, I felt much more secure in my relationship with Ryan and less concerned about how others perceived him. We started actively trying for a baby, and I made an effort to stop worrying about the social dynamics I described earlier. Then came my parents' 40th anniversary celebration. They rented a large cabin by the lake for a weekend gathering with extended family. About 20 of us attended, including my sister Megan, her husband Todd, and their 2 teenagers. The first day went relatively smoothly. Ryan helped with setup, cooking, and entertaining the younger kids. He taught my nephews how to skip stones on the lake and helped my dad fix a leaky faucet in the cabin bathroom. There was some minor tension when Todd loudly dismissed climate change as hysteria while Ryan was in earshot, but Ryan simply walked away rather than engaging. The real trouble started on the second evening. My uncle brought up politics during dinner, and a heated discussion ensued. Most of my family leans conservative, while Ryan and I have more progressive views. When the topic turned to environmental regulations, several family members began making fun of tree huggers and eco-warriors. Ryan remained quiet until my brother-in-law Todd directly asked him, "You work in that field, right? Aren't all these regulations just killing businesses for no reason?" Instead of taking the bait, Ryan calmly explained that properly designed environmental protections can actually create jobs and drive innovation. He talked about projects he'd worked on where companies ended up saving money by implementing more sustainable practices. Todd seemed irritated by Ryan's measured response and kept pushing, becoming increasingly confrontational. When Ryan mentioned scientific consensus on climate issues, Todd cut him off and said something about so-called experts and their hidden agendas. What happened next surprised me. My father, who rarely involves himself in arguments, suddenly interjected, "Some of us worked real jobs our whole lives, not playing around with plants and dirt." The table fell silent. Ryan excused himself and went outside. I followed him after a few minutes and found him sitting on the dock, looking out at the water. When I asked if he was okay, he nodded and said he just needed some air. We sat together quietly for a while before rejoining the group for dessert. The next morning, I overheard my mother and sister talking in the kitchen. My sister said, "He's just so different from the rest of us. I don't know what she sees in him." My mother responded, "Well, you know how your sister has always tried to be unique and intellectual. He fits that image for her." I stepped into the kitchen then, and they immediately changed the subject. The rest of the day was tense, with everyone being overly polite but distant. We left earlier than planned, citing work commitments. On the drive home, I apologized to Ryan for my family's behavior. He assured me it wasn't my fault and said he was used to these reactions. But then he said something that caught me off guard. "Your dad reminded me of my father." Ryan rarely talks about his father, who left when he was young. I knew they weren't close, but he'd never shared many details. As we drove, Ryan opened up about his childhood in a way he never had before. His father, a factory foreman, had been deeply disappointed to have a son who preferred books and science to hunting and sports. Despite Ryan's success in cross-country running, his father considered it a soft sport compared to football or wrestling. When Ryan showed interest in environmental science, his father mocked him relentlessly, calling him Nancy and other derogatory names. The isolation Ryan experienced in school was compounded by this rejection at home. His father's friends and their sons would exclude him from activities, and his father never defended him. When Ryan was 15, his father left the family for another woman and rarely contacted them afterward. As Ryan shared these painful memories, many things clicked into place for me. His unwavering authenticity, his comfort with being an outsider, his calm in the face of confrontation, these weren't just personality traits but survival mechanisms he'd developed growing up. He'd learned early that trying to please others by being someone he wasn't never worked, so he stopped trying. When we got home, I called my mother and expressed how hurt I was by what I'd overheard and by my father's comment at dinner. She became defensive, saying I was overreacting and that they just found Ryan a bit odd but meant no harm. When I pressed further, she finally admitted something revealing: "Your father just thinks you could do better. Someone more like Todd, who could really take care of you and give you a normal life." I was stunned. Ryan has a successful career, treats me with respect and kindness, and we have a beautiful home together. What more taking care did I need? When I pointed this out, my mother said, "Well, you know how your father is. He likes to feel needed." And there it was. The real issue wasn't Ryan at all, it was that he didn't play into my father's need to be the patriarch, the provider of wisdom and assistance. Unlike Todd, who constantly asked my father for advice and help with projects, even when he didn't actually follow the advice, Ryan was self-sufficient and capable. This realization was both enlightening and infuriating. My family's coolness toward Ryan had little to do with who he actually was and everything to do with their own insecurities and expectations. I decided to take some space from my family to process everything. I told my mother we wouldn't be attending Sunday dinners for a while and muted the family group chat on my phone. Meanwhile, Ryan and I continued trying for a baby, and our relationship felt stronger than ever. His openness about his past had created a new level of intimacy between us, and my defense of him to my family had shown both of us where my priorities lay. Last week, we received some unexpected news that made all these family tensions seem even more insignificant. I'm pregnant with twins. We're still in shock but incredibly excited. Ryan has been researching everything about twin pregnancies and has already started planning modifications to our home office to create a nursery. I haven't told my family yet. Part of me wants to share this joy with them, but another part feels protective of this news and reluctant to subject it to their judgment. For now, we've only told our close university friends, who responded with characteristic enthusiasm and immediate offers of support. As I write this, I'm realizing that the family dynamics I've been worrying about for years don't actually matter much in the face of the family Ryan and I are creating together. We get to define what matters in our home, what values we teach our children, and who plays a significant role in their lives. I'm still not entirely sure how to navigate the relationship with my parents and sister going forward, especially with the babies on the way. But I'm certain that I won't allow them to make Ryan feel like an outsider in our children's lives the way they've tried to make him feel in mine. Final update. It's been 4 months since my last update, and I'm now well into my second trimester with the twins. The pregnancy has been challenging but manageable, and our recent anatomy scan showed that we're expecting a boy and a girl, both developing normally. Ryan has been an incredible support throughout, attending every appointment and helping me cope with the physical discomfort. After taking some time to think, I finally told my family about the pregnancy about 2 months ago. Their reactions were mixed. My mother was immediately excited about becoming a grandmother again, already talking about nursery themes and baby clothes. My father seemed pleased but made some comment about hoping Ryan would step up to the challenges of fatherhood. My sister congratulated us somewhat stiffly, then immediately compared my pregnancy to hers, noting that she never had morning sickness, unlike me, who suffered terribly with it. The most surprising reaction came from my brother-in-law Todd. He pulled Ryan aside at a family gathering and had what appeared to be a serious conversation. I couldn't hear what was said, but afterward, Ryan told me that Todd had actually apologized for his behavior at my parents' anniversary weekend. According to Ryan, Todd admitted that he often felt insecure around Ryan because of his educational background and success, and compensated by being dismissive. I'm not sure what prompted this self-awareness from Todd, but it was an unexpected development. My relationship with my parents has remained somewhat strained, though we're in regular contact. I've established firmer boundaries, making it clear that comments questioning Ryan's character or our relationship aren't acceptable. My mother has mostly respected this, but my father still occasionally makes subtle digs, particularly about Ryan's career choice or his more reserved nature. The most significant change has come from within me. The pregnancy has shifted my perspective dramatically. I've stopped caring so much about whether my family fully accepts Ryan or not. Their opinions seem less important now that I'm focused on creating a healthy environment for our children. Ryan and I have had several conversations about family dynamics and how we want to approach parenting. We both agree that we want our children to value authenticity and integrity over social conformity. We want them to see that standing by your principles, even when it makes you an outsider, is a form of strength rather than weakness. We've also talked about how to handle my family's influence on our children. We won't cut them off, but we'll be vigilant about any attempts to undermine Ryan's role or to impose values that contradict what we believe is important. Ryan is particularly concerned about exposing our kids to the kind of casual dismissal of environmental concerns that's common in my family, given that conservation is central to his life's work. Our university friends have been wonderful throughout this journey. They've organized a baby shower, helped us prepare the nursery, and offered practical support for after the births. Maya and Elena, who have been together for 10 years now, have even asked to be the twins' godmothers. The contrast between how these friends treat Ryan and how my family treats him remains stark, reinforcing my confidence in our chosen family. Ryan's colleagues have also surprised us. When news of the pregnancy spread at his workplace, several coworkers whom he thought barely noticed him came forward with congratulations and advice. It seems that his reputation for integrity, while perhaps making him less approachable for casual socializing, has earned him a kind of respect he wasn't aware of. As for Ryan himself, I've noticed subtle changes. He's still authentically himself, still unwilling to engage in social niceties that feel dishonest to him, but he's making more effort with my family for the sake of our children. He listens patiently to my father's unsolicited advice about home repairs, even when he knows a better way. He asks my mother questions about her garden, though plants aren't among his interests. These small gestures haven't transformed him into someone else, but they show his commitment to creating as harmonious a family environment as possible for our children. Last weekend, we had dinner with Ryan's mother, who came to visit from out of state. Watching her and Ryan together, I was struck by their similar quiet dignity and unwavering principles. She told stories about Ryan as a child, his curiosity, his kindness to animals, his determination to understand how things worked. I could see these same qualities in the man sitting beside me, and it filled me with certainty that he'll be an exceptional father. There was a moment during the evening when Ryan's mother mentioned how lonely he had been as a child. She said she'd worried about him finding his place in the world. Then she looked at me, at our home, at the ultrasound pictures on the refrigerator, and said, "But he found exactly where he belongs." That simple statement crystallized everything for me. Ryan doesn't need to be understood or liked by everyone. He doesn't need to change himself to fit my family's expectations. He has found his place, with me, with our friends who value him, with the children we're bringing into the world, and with his work that makes a meaningful difference. The question that prompted my original post, why people don't seem to like my wonderful partner, still doesn't have a simple answer. Some people are put off by his authenticity in a world that often rewards social conformity. Some feel threatened by his unwavering principles. Some simply don't recognize the quiet strength in his refusal to be anyone other than himself. But I've realized that these reactions say more about others than they do about Ryan. And while I once worried about what this meant for our future, I now see it as an opportunity to teach our children a valuable lesson, that true connection comes not from being whoever others want you to be, but from finding the people who appreciate you exactly as you are. As we prepare to welcome our twins in a few months, I'm no longer concerned about the social dynamics that once troubled me so deeply. Instead, I'm grateful for the family we're creating, one built on authenticity, mutual respect, and the kind of love that accepts rather than tries to change. Thank you to everyone who followed our story and offered advice along the way. Your perspectives helped me see what truly matters, and for that, I'll always be grateful. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. My brother-in-law lived with us rent-free, demanded our car, and when we refused, in-laws bought him a BMW. But karma struck and he got arrested for DUI. My husband, 30M, and I, 28F, have been married for 6 years and together for 8. We moved from our hometown to a bigger city about 3 years ago because I got a really good job opportunity in tech. The salary was almost triple what I was making before, and since my husband works remotely as a software developer, we decided it made sense to relocate. His family wasn't happy about us moving. They tried everything to make us stay, from emotional manipulation to guilt tripping. My mother-in-law even faked having health issues, though we later found out she was perfectly fine. My parents, on the other hand, were completely supportive because they understood this meant better opportunities for both of us. The move created some tension with my in-laws, but we still tried to maintain a good relationship. We visited them every other month and called regularly. However, they never made an effort to visit us despite having the means to do so. They always had excuses like the drive was too long or they were too busy, even though they frequently traveled to other places for vacations. About 4 months ago, my brother-in-law, 23M, graduated from college with a degree in computer science. He didn't have any job lined up because according to him, he wanted to take some time off after graduation to find himself. His parents supported this decision and even funded his 2-month vacation to Europe as a graduation gift. When he returned, he suddenly decided he wanted to work in tech and that our city had the best opportunities. He asked if he could stay with us while job hunting. My husband was excited about having his brother around, and I agreed because I thought it would help us bond as a family. We have a spare bedroom that we use as a home office, but we converted it into a bedroom for him. We didn't ask for any rent because we wanted to help him get started. We even covered his groceries and gave him some spending money. The agreement was that he would actively look for jobs and help around the house. He was supposed to stay for a maximum of 3 months, which we thought was reasonable time to find a job in tech given the current market. But things started going downhill almost immediately. He would stay out until 3 or 4 a.m. without telling us where he was. He'd come home drunk and make noise, waking us up. He'd leave his dirty dishes in the sink for days, expecting us to clean them. His room became a mess with pizza boxes and empty beer cans everywhere. The bathroom he used was constantly dirty, and he never once did his laundry. He would just leave his dirty clothes in the hallway expecting me to wash them. Whenever we tried talking to him about his behavior, he'd get defensive and say we were treating him like a child. He'd remind us that he was a guest in our house and we shouldn't be so controlling. When we asked about his job search, he'd say he was networking, but we never saw him actually apply for any positions. The real problem started last week when he barged into our bedroom while we were having breakfast and demanded that my husband give him his car. Not lend, give. He said he needed it permanently for job hunting because using public transport was embarrassing and only for poor people. He said since my husband worked from home, he didn't really need the car anyway. My husband, being the kind person he is, actually considered it. He has always had a soft spot for his brother and tends to give in to his demands. But I put my foot down. We only have one car that my husband needs occasionally for client meetings. Plus, there's excellent public transport in our city that many professionals use daily. When we refused, my brother-in-law threw a tantrum like a teenager. He slammed doors, called us selfish, and then called his parents crying about how we were making his life difficult. Within minutes, my in-laws were calling us. They started pressuring my husband, saying family should help family and that since we were doing well financially, we had an obligation to help his brother. I tried explaining our side. I mentioned how their son hadn't been seriously looking for jobs, how he had been disrespecting our house rules, and how he had shown no responsibility so far. But they wouldn't listen. My mother-in-law said I was just jealous of their close family bond and was trying to create problems. Then 2 days ago, my in-laws showed up at our doorstep unannounced. They had driven 800 miles just to talk sense into us. The moment they arrived, they started attacking me. My mother-in-law said I was being selfish and that I had changed their son. According to her, my husband had always been generous and helpful before marriage, but I had made him stingy and selfish. My father-in-law, who usually stays quiet during family arguments, joined in this time. He said they had always treated me like a daughter but I wasn't treating them like parents. He brought up how they had welcomed me into their family and had never interfered in our lives, which is completely untrue. They tried to control everything from our wedding date to where we would live. Throughout this conversation, they kept bringing up how my husband was the responsible son who had always helped his younger brother. They mentioned multiple instances from college where my husband had covered for his brother's mistakes or bailed him out of trouble. Apparently, when my brother-in-law was in high school, he had crashed their father's car but my husband had taken the blame to protect him. This was clearly a pattern. My brother-in-law would mess up and my husband would fix things. What really got to me was when they revealed that they had already promised my brother-in-law that he could have my husband's car. They hadn't even consulted us before making this promise. When I pointed this out, they said family doesn't need permission to make such promises. My mother-in-law actually said, we raised him, so technically the car belongs to us too. I lost it at this point. I told them that if they were so concerned about their younger son, they should buy him a car themselves instead of expecting us to give up ours. They said they couldn't afford it right now, which I know is a lie because they just bought a vacation home last year and regularly go on expensive trips. To my surprise, my husband finally stood up to his parents. He told them that they had always favored his brother and it needed to stop. He mentioned how they had used his college fund to pay for his brother's private school, how they had made him turn down better job opportunities to stay close to home, and how they had always expected him to sacrifice for his brother. He said he was done enabling his brother's entitled behavior. This led to a huge argument where my brother-in-law started crying and my mother-in-law accused me of turning their family against each other. She said I had poisoned my husband's mind against them and that I would regret breaking up their family. Finally, I told my brother-in-law that he had 2 weeks to find other accommodation because he couldn't stay with us anymore. My in-laws were shocked that we would throw him out on the streets but I stood firm. My father-in-law said we would regret this decision and that karma would catch up with us. They left in anger, taking my brother-in-law with them. Now my husband's extended family is blowing up our phones saying we're horrible people for not helping family. Some are saying we're heartless for making my brother-in-law use public transport, others are calling us selfish for having a spare room but not letting family use it. My husband says we did the right thing but I can see he's stressed about the whole situation. Were we wrong to refuse help to family? Update 1. First, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Your support helped us stay firm in our decision, especially with what happened next. Things got really interesting after my last post. About 3 days after my in-laws left with my brother-in-law, we found out through my husband's cousin that they had bought him a brand new car, a BMW 3 Series that cost nearly $45,000. Not only that, but they also got him a 1-bedroom apartment in one of the nice areas of our city and are paying his $2,200 monthly rent. They never did anything like this for my husband. When he needed a car in college, they told him to take the bus or buy his own car. When my husband found out, he was hurt but not surprised. He said this was just another example of their favoritism. What really bothered us was finding out through another family member that my in-laws had taken out a substantial loan for the car. This is the same couple who had refused to co-sign my husband's student loans years ago, forcing him to take higher interest private loans. My husband had to work 2 part-time jobs throughout college, one at a local diner and another doing night security at a warehouse, while maintaining his grades. Meanwhile, his brother got to focus solely on his studies because he wasn't good at multitasking like his older brother. After this revelation, my husband finally opened up about years of unfair treatment that he had never shared before. He told me how when he was 17, his parents had used his entire college fund, money his grandparents had specifically saved for his education, to pay for his brother's private high school because he needed extra support with his studies. My husband had to settle for a state school because of this, even though he had the grades for better universities. He also shared how he had received a full scholarship to a prestigious engineering school in another state, but his parents made him turn it down. They said he needed to stay close to home because his brother was having a difficult phase and needed his older brother around. They convinced him that family was more important than career opportunities. My husband ended up going to a local college that only offered him a partial scholarship. The pattern continued after college too. My husband had received job offers from major tech companies on the West Coast, but his parents' guilt tripped him into turning them down. They said his brother was starting college and needed guidance, that they were getting older and needed him nearby, and that he was being selfish for wanting to move away. He ended up taking a lower-paying local job just to please them. What makes all this worse is how my brother-in-law has been behaving since getting his new car and apartment. He's been posting constantly on social media about his upgrade in life. He posted pictures of his new car with captions like "Sometimes you have to leave toxic people behind to get what you deserve," and "Funny how some people must be feeling now that I have better things than them." He even posted a long rant about how some people, clearly referring to us, are just jealous of others' success and try to hold them back by making them use public transport. The worst part? My in-laws are actively encouraging this behavior. They're liking and commenting on these posts with things like "So proud of you, son, and you deserve nothing but the best." My mother-in-law even shared one of his posts and added, "Some people never understand the meaning of family, but will always support our children who truly appreciate us." My husband finally reached his breaking point and called his parents to confront them about their blatant favoritism. The conversation did not go well. They completely turned it around on him. His mother accused him of being jealous of his brother's success. She said things like, "Your brother appreciates family more than you do, and we didn't raise you to be this petty." His father joined in, saying my husband was being ungrateful for all they had done for him. When my husband brought up the college fund incident, his father actually said, "We used that money for family, and you're still complaining about it after all these years? This proves how your wife has poisoned your mind against us." They claimed they had always treated both sons equally and that my husband was just bitter because his brother was doing better in life. They conveniently forgot that my husband has a successful career that he built entirely on his own, without their help. They also ignored the fact that their younger son is still unemployed and completely dependent on them. The conversation ended with my mother-in-law crying about how I had stolen her son from them and destroyed their family bond. She said my husband never questioned their decisions before meeting me, which just shows how little they understand or respect their own son's feelings. After this conversation, my husband was quiet for a long time. He finally said that he had always known about their favoritism but had convinced himself that it was normal, that maybe his brother really did need more support. But seeing everything laid out like this, especially their reaction to his feelings, made him realize how toxic their behavior has been. We've decided to take a step back from his family for now. We're not officially going no contact, but we're not making any effort to stay in touch either. My husband says he needs time to process everything and deal with years of suppressed feelings about his family's treatment. The extended family is still trying to mediate, saying we should try to understand his parents' perspective and that family conflicts shouldn't be allowed to escalate like this. But honestly, after everything that's happened, we're done trying to understand people who never tried to understand us. I'll update again if anything significant happens, but for now, we're focusing on our own mental peace and happiness. Update 2. I wasn't planning to update again so soon, but last night things took a dramatic turn. At around 2 a.m., we got a call from the local police department. My brother-in-law had been arrested for drunk driving. He had crashed his new BMW into 2 parked cars while coming back from a club and failed the breathalyzer test spectacularly. His blood alcohol level was more than twice the legal limit. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but his car was totaled, and he caused significant damage to the parked vehicles. Within minutes of his arrest, he had called our in-laws, but apparently, they couldn't figure out what to do since their connections were all back in our hometown. So they called my husband in a panic, expecting him to drop everything and rush to help his brother. My mother-in-law was hysterical on the phone, saying we needed to contact their lawyer friend who had recently moved to our city and could handle the situation. What they really meant was that they wanted my husband to use his professional connections, he knows several lawyers through his work, to help sweep this under the rug. They also wanted him to help pay for the damages to the parked cars since their insurance wouldn't cover it due to the DUI. My father-in-law even had the audacity to say that since we had refused to give our car to my brother-in-law, we were partly responsible for this situation. But this time, my husband stood his ground. He told them his brother was an adult who made the conscious decision to drink and drive, and he needed to face the consequences of his actions. He refused to call any lawyers or pay for damages. My mother-in-law started crying, saying we were abandoning family in their time of need and that we would regret this decision for the rest of our lives. Here's where things get interesting. After this call, my husband received a message from his old friend from hometown who works at the local police department there. Apparently, this wasn't my brother-in-law's first drunk driving incident. He had been caught twice before, once during his senior year of high school and once during college. Both times, my in-laws had managed to sweep things under the rug using their connections. The first time, they convinced the officer to let it slide because he was just a teenager who made a mistake. The second time, they donated a significant amount to some police charity, and the incident mysteriously disappeared from records. My husband had no idea about any of this because his parents had kept it from him. They probably knew he would have tried to intervene and make his brother face consequences. When my husband confronted his parents about these previous incidents, they tried to downplay everything. My father-in-law said they were just minor incidents and that my brother-in-law was just being young. My mother-in-law actually tried to blame my brother-in-law's friends for being bad influences, completely ignoring her son's responsibility in the matter. The most infuriating part was when they tried to use my husband's past to manipulate him. They brought up how he had once helped cover up for his brother's car accident in high school, something they had forced him to do, saying you helped him then, why won't you help him now? They completely ignored the fact that enabling this behavior had only made things worse. My brother-in-law spent the night in jail because neither we nor our in-laws went to bail him out. The next morning, his parents drove down to the city, funny how they can make the drive when it's for their favorite son, and hired a lawyer. But the evidence was pretty clear-cut this time, and with 2 damaged cars and security camera footage, it wasn't something they could easily make disappear. The lawyer they hired actually called my husband to ask if he would testify about his brother's good character and maybe mention how he had been under stress due to job hunting. My husband declined, saying he wouldn't lie in court. This led to another round of angry calls from his parents about how he was betraying his brother. What really got to me was finding out that my brother-in-law had been at a club celebrating a job offer, his first actual job offer since graduation. But now, with a DUI on his record, the company has rescinded the offer. Instead of accepting responsibility, he's been telling everyone that this is somehow our fault because we stressed him out by kicking him out of our house. My husband is done with the whole situation. He says he spent years trying to protect his brother from consequences, and all it did was make him more irresponsible. Our in-laws still don't see how their constant enabling has contributed to their younger son's behavior, and at this point, I don't think they ever will. Update 3. A lot has happened since my last update. My brother-in-law's case finally went to court 2 weeks ago. Despite his expensive lawyer, he got sentenced to 100 hours of community service, a 1-year license suspension, and mandatory attendance at alcohol education classes. He also has to pay substantial fines and restitution for the damaged vehicles. The judge wasn't lenient because of his previous hidden DUI incidents that somehow came to light during the proceedings. My in-laws tried to blame us for not helping, coming up with the most ridiculous logic. According to them, if we had just given him our car initially, he would have felt more responsible because it was family property. They actually suggested that driving a new BMW made him overconfident, and somehow this was our fault for not giving him our older, more modest car. The mental gymnastics were truly impressive. Now they're demanding that my husband drive his brother to job interviews since he can't drive himself. When we refused, they started spreading stories in the family about how we had abandoned them in their darkest hour. My mother-in-law has been telling everyone that I've turned her son into a heartless person who doesn't care about his own brother's future. The situation got even more complicated when we discovered that my brother-in-law had been lying about his job search. Remember that job offer he lost because of the DUI? Turns out there was no offer. He had been making it up to get his parents off his back. We found this out when my husband ran into the HR person from that company at a tech conference. Not only had they never made him an offer, but he had never even applied there. My father-in-law called last week to tell us they're considering selling their vacation home to help pay for my brother-in-law's legal fees and to get him a fresh start in another city. He tried to guilt-trip my husband by saying this could have been avoided if you had just helped your brother when he needed it. The irony is that they're still enabling him instead of making him take responsibility for his actions. The final straw came when my brother-in-law started telling people that my husband was jealous of him because mom and dad love me more. Instead of correcting this behavior, our in-laws encouraged it. My mother-in-law even posted on Facebook about how some sons forget their roots once they get married, but at least one of her sons still values family. My husband finally had enough. He spent an entire evening writing a detailed email to his parents, listing every instance of their favoritism and enabling behavior since his childhood. He included specific dates, events, and amounts of money they had spent on his brother while denying him similar support. He told them he was going no contact until they acknowledged their toxic behavior and got his brother professional help for his apparent alcohol issues. They responded exactly as we expected, with denial and deflection. They called his email disrespectful and said he was just trying to hurt them because he was jealous of their relationship with his brother. My mother-in-law tried to rally the extended family against us, but surprisingly, many relatives have started seeing through their behavior. We haven't heard from them directly in weeks, though they occasionally try to reach us through other family members. My brother-in-law is still unemployed and living off our in-laws, who continue to fund his lifestyle while complaining about their financial struggles. The most positive outcome of this whole situation is how much lighter my husband feels after cutting contact. He says he's finally free from the obligation to constantly rescue his brother and manage his parents' emotions. We're focusing on our lives now and are actually planning to start a family soon. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for toxic family members is to let them deal with the consequences of their own actions. The only update I expect to make after this would be if they actually seek professional help and make real changes, but given their pattern of behavior, I'm not holding my breath.